right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Creative Mindset Podcast. Thank you for being here today. Our guest today has many special talents, and in fact, the first time I met her, she was wearing head to toe a Wonder Woman costume, and it was October 31st, and her daughter was present. So you never know, she might be the real thing. We'll uncover that later. But her background in hospitality has carved a unique path for her to be where she is in her career, and I'm excited to dive into that. But don't get it twisted. She's here to spill the tea. Ladies and gentlemen, my next door neighbor, your new best friend, Sheena Brady. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me today. I did not realize we met when I was wearing a Wonder Woman costume.
Yes.
I love that.
I think you had just moved into the neighborhood,
Okay.
and it was the first Halloween, and that was the first time I met you. So
That checks.
full disclosure, we live across the street from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I know how she gardens and when she puts out her garbage cans. A little early for my liking, but that's okay. So yeah, how's everything going with you and Tease and everything like that?
Things are good. Yeah, we definitely had a lot of curveballs over the last few months that wasn't in my business bingo card, I guess, from the postal strike that we had at the end of last year to heading into tariffs and all of the nonsense happening south of the border, especially as an e-commerce and retail business with 40% of our customers in the US. It's been interesting to navigate, but we're good overall. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, we're going to talk. I wanted to pick your brain later in the show about tariffs. So we'll hold on to that because I know that you've been very vocal on how that's impacted the business and just at least from who I follow on social media, you're the most vocal as to being transparent about the actual costs that are coming down the pipeline to you. So very interesting stuff. But, like I said in the intro, you've had a very interesting path, worked for some amazing companies. Mm-hmm. Are you from Ottawa originally?
It's interesting. I'm technically born in Ottawa, but Ottawa doesn't necessarily identify as home for me.
Okay.
The only constant in my life was moving around a lot. As a kid, as a young adult, I went to 5 different elementary schools, 3 different high schools. So yes, I was born here, and these are where my roots are now, and I'm very happy. But I moved around a lot, all around Ontario and around the U.S. for my career.
Interesting. So at some point, you start to enter the workforce, maybe with some part-time jobs that were a little bit more front-facing than what we like to have. Were those in hospitalities?
Yeah.
Was that how it all started?
My background is over a decade in hospitality. I mean, I've done everything from being, a bus girl to hostess to bottle service girl to bartender, service manager, you name it. And that journey led me to actually pursue an education in hotel restaurant management. So that's my educational background. I originally went to school for business and ironically dropped out. And I say ironic because I probably wouldn't have been the person on paper to have a successful business if you were to make a bet on me back then. But nonetheless, I went back to school for hotel restaurant management. I graduated. I got to work in some really cool cities like New York City for some Michelin star chefs. That journey led me to the San Francisco Bay Area where I worked for 4 Seasons Hotels. And then eventually that brought me to Toronto to the Shangri-La Hotel, where by that time I was a professional wine sommelier. And then I just kind of jumped into being a professional tea sommelier because I was there to deliver on Toronto's largest PR-worthy tea program. But plot twist, I didn't even drink tea at the time. So that's how I knew I needed to walk the talk, was take that professional tea sommelier program. And I went from being highly addicted to coffee, like 7-8 cups of coffee a day to get.
Oh my God.
Yeah. If you worked in hospitality, you know what I'm talking about, 10, 12-hour shifts. And then I'd go home in the evening and have wine to wind down. It was rinse, repeat. And so that's really how the world of tea and functional botanicals kind of found me. Later on in my journey in hospitality, I realized, wait a minute, I don't need that 3rd, 4th, 5th cup of coffee. I can turn to yerba mate or green tea, or in the evenings, I'd have valerian root to have a good night's rest, or rooibos. And it really helped to elevate what was at the time, I had very bad anxiety, insomnia, and digestion challenges. And so, through the world of tea, it kind of became my building block for wellness. And flash forward many years, that's how Tease started and why we're still here today.
Yeah. So you go to Algonquin.
Yes.
And were you at business there or and transferred? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I went to school for business at Algonquin and dropped out very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And while you're at Algonquin, are you starting to think about, hey, maybe one day I'm opening up my own hotel or own restaurant or something like that. Is that where you caught that entrepreneur bug, would you say?
Yeah, it's funny. Like when people are like, "How'd you become an entrepreneur?" Usually there's some story about, how it's like ingrained in them as a child or whatever. It wasn't
Some lawn care business.
right. Yeah, it just wasn't like that for me. I just think it wasn't through Algonquin in business from dropping out. It was actually when I went to school for hospitality. That's when I thought, oh, the dream is for me to open my own restaurant one day. Mostly because between you and I consider myself a highly unemployable person.
And the rest of everybody watching this now.
So it was mostly so that like I knew early on when I went back to school for hotel restaurant management, I'd have to carve my own path.
Sure.
And entrepreneurship was probably going to be the safest career for me.
Interesting. So big hotels.
Yes.
Do you have any like wild stories of shit that you've seen go down at hotels?
So many crazy things go down. I don't know what I'm allowed to say or not say. But I'm working at the Shangri-La in Toronto, especially during TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival. We'd have everyone from Jake Gyllenhaal to Hugh Jackman, Nicole Kidman, like everyone came through our doors. I don't want to spill the tea on like specific celebrities.
Yeah, we can say the unknown,
Yeah. Well, there was one, a very, let's say just jacked, muscular actor.
Okay, it's Jason Momoa, obviously, but go on.
I'm not going to confirm or deny. But yeah, who just had like a reputation for wanting to shut the bar down and stay after hours. And, we'd have to have people that were there after hours till like 6, 7 in the morning to help them get back to their room, for example. And we'd always have to, like do the long straw, short straw thing.
I love that.
Who's going to stick around to help that famous celebrity get back to their room safely.
Bringing Hollywood to Toronto one step at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting though, because you go through pretty much the trenches, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah.
I have a godfather who was a GM of a hotel, so I kind of know the ins and outs of how crazy it can be. Mm-hmm. And I can only imagine how much it is from non-management side of things, I guess you would say, but also just like trying to find your career while going through this crazy life, right?
Absolutely.
So you're in Toronto, that lasts a little while, mm-hmm. and that's the last stage before you ended up back in Ottawa?
Yeah, basically. So by that time, I'd implemented this big PR-worthy tea program at the Shangri-La Hotel. And I was working these crazy shifts. And fortunately, I found tea and botanicals to kind of help elevate my very much deteriorating well-being at the time. And so I started blending tea out of my tiny apartment just for myself, right?
So the business has started.
The business has started about a year after being at that hotel. And I was just doing it quietly on the side with whatever little time I had. And then, I'd be drinking my own concoctions and there would be, guests in the hotel or employees in the hotel. I'm like, what are you drinking? And then I would nerd out on, what I had created. And so it was really just a creative escape that I would share with people. And then people wanted to buy it. So then it became from a creative escape to like a hobby. And then it kind of turned into a side hustle. And then for reasons I'll never really know, I got fired from the hotel that I worked at while I had Tease in its like state of infancy as a side hustle.
Yeah, I was going to ask, was Shangri-La, open to what you were doing? Were they interested in what you were doing? Were they embracing it with giving it to guests?
They never told me. I don't know. I just showed up one day and was told my services are no longer needed. So we could probably put
But they knew about
two
it
together. They knew. Yeah, they knew. Word was getting around for sure. I wasn't hiding it, but I wasn't actively promoting it either. I got fired. And at that point, because Tease was so teeny tiny, like it was barely a side hustle. It was probably still a hobby at that time, frankly. And I think any normal person in my situation, when they get fired from something, they would just dust themselves off and get a job in a similar field in the same industry. And for me too, like I didn't think Tease was going to be anything big at that point. So it was kind of my rock bottom, to be honest, because here I was, I'd spent like over a decade in the hospitality industry, gave my blood, sweat, tears, hours, sacrificed relationships, sacrificed friendships, like I never went home for the holidays. Like I sacrificed all these things just for some hotel to make me feel disposable in an instant. Like it was an awful, awful feeling. And again, I could have dusted myself off and go get a job in another hotel. But instead, I knew that I had this tiny spark with Tease. And I thought, okay, well, it's nowhere near even paying my cell phone bill yet, let alone my life. So I will need another job.
Who was buying it at the time?
Oh, like just people in my immediate ecosystem.
Okay.
Like it took me 4 months to get my first online sale from a stranger. Like it was a very slow thing. And I was very much an analog girl in a digital world. Like I didn't even own a laptop when I first started Tease. Like I was doing most things from my phone. So anyway, so I knew I needed another job. I knew a guy who worked at Shopify, and he said, look, the only job I have for you, you're going to have to take a couple steps back based on your salary and what you did at Shangri-La. So if you can lower your expectations, I can get you a job in customer support for like $17 an hour. And I thought, great, sign me up. It's remote. It almost sounded too good to be true.
And this is kind of around the time that Shopify is making a massive push in the market space,
yeah,
right?
This was 2014. This was a while ago, right? So here I am in 2014. I now am working at Shopify and customer support. So when you call that 1-800 number back then, your banner was broken or you needed help with something, it was people like me that were on the other end, like helping you navigate that. It was really cool because I also got a front seat into the best e-com education I could have asked for. Here I was helping other entrepreneurs get a little bit stronger, faster every single day. And it was so motivating because I thought, well, if they can do it, hell, I can do it, right? And I was learning so much just on the go, helping other merchants, other entrepreneurs. And so I thought it was going to be a short thing, maybe a year or two. So I could, put a lot of money aside and grow the business on the side. And Shopify loved that I was an entrepreneur, I should say. Like they were like, you do you, keep building this business. You're the poster child of what we want to see with people embracing side hustles and taking control of, their disposable income and all of that. So they were super supportive.
So you moved back to Ottawa for this job.
I moved back to Ottawa, yes. So once I got fired from Shangri-La and I had an existential crisis, I came back home.
A little bit cheaper to live.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That saving money was actually taking place, not in Toronto where the temptations are high.
100%. And I had a long distance boyfriend at the time who was living in Ottawa. He's my now husband, plot twist.
I like that guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy. So he would show up to Toronto, every other weekend to come and see me. He got bored of that by 5 months of our long distance relationship. And he said, look, I just know I want to be with you. I just need your consent to come next time with a U-Haul truck. And I thought, this is either going to be the best idea or the worst idea, but we won't know until he shows up with the U-Haul truck. So I said, bring the truck. And he moved all my stuff to Toronto or to Ottawa, and the small business. And I ended up working at Shopify for 8 years while growing Tease. So it wasn't just a short-term thing.
And I know I've spoken to you about this before, but you weren't necessarily part of this. At one point, Shopify had a program where they wanted their employees to be more engaged with a side hustle, yes. Right? And you had already started this.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to do it because I already had one.
But was that first website at a discount from Shopify?
Oh, Shopify went above and beyond. You not only, while I worked there, I had a free website, but anybody who wanted to open a store got a free Shopify store who worked there. You got a lot of apps for free to demo and try out as long as you gave the developers feedback, which they loved too. You got $1,000 an allowance to start a business. So every employee got $1,000 to start a business if they wanted to, which is really cool to just get your first round of inventory off the ground.
Sure.
Designs, whatever. And then they started
or your first logo or whatever.
Exactly. And then they launched the Start a Business competition. And that's where finally, you could compete against other businesses and you could win mentorship with like Toby and Harley, stuff like that, which is really cool. And that's where, Bush Bomb came out of. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
They came out of the Start a Business.
One of our friends, David Gaylord, and remind me the other gentleman.
Tim Burns.
Yes, Tim. Great Ottawa success story as well. So amazing things have come through Shopify, including Tease. You had started it previously, but I think realistically, you look at having that support system of the company that is paying your bills being happy.
Yeah.
Little bit of a difference in how you were treated from Shangri-La. So obviously it propelled things for you. So in that time though, you like you said, you're talking to entrepreneurs. Was that feeding into your drive to just make it happen?
Absolutely. Yes. Because I would see some of the most obscure businesses like doing millions, right? Or even just like tens of thousands. And you would never think like, oh, I didn't know that product could be such a popular thing that people
Sure.
would want, right? And so it also taught me the power of what strong branding can do, what strong marketing can do, being a purpose-built business. And I just started seeing these like common threads through successful businesses and entrepreneurs. And it no doubt like helped shape my own roadmap.
So you're starting to get a sense of even just like the framework of success. Okay, I've spoken to 6 people today. They're all doing over $3 million. I can see they've all checked these boxes. What have I not checked off yet for Tease? I even did a deep dive way back. I found some really fun branding that you guys had. Hot pink was part of the color palette.
Back in the archives.
How did you, this really does speak to your creativity. And obviously there are agency partners that get involved as businesses grow. But I'm sure there was a point in time where you said to yourself, okay, we're going to move from this hot pink and we're going to go to this pastels look and we're going to really elevate it to speak to the target personas that we know. How did that, you're going through that for the first time and you're realizing that, talk to us about that. Cause I think that plays on to even just your creativity as a business owner from an artistic standpoint.
Yeah. You're always iterating, right? Like my packaging has had more updates than iOS over the years. When we first started, like you pointed out, it was hot pink, but it wasn't just hot pink. I thought I was going to make tea sexy, which is the craziest thing when I say that now. But back then, back in like 2013, 2014, when you look at Tavana, you look at David's Tea, you look at, all these other tea companies, it's just kind of, I'm sorry, like a little bit, like it doesn't really stand out or shock you or surprise you. So the name Tease, it's playful, it's slightly provocative. It's, what kind of teas are you or we're in the mood for today, right? Are you looking for something to give you more energy, what have you? And like the ethos of that is still all here today. But that hot pink was something to just really shock and surprise people, a little bit more of like a sexy brand, a bit edgy. I would even wrap my tea, instead of in bubble wrap to protect the canisters, hot pink feather boas. Okay. So this was like, again, like back in like 2013, 2014, when YouTube influencers were barely a thing and I was sending tea to them, they would do these unboxings and like feathers would be like flying out of the video all over the place. And it was just comical. And then at a certain point, a very close friend and peer mentor of mine said, look, I get what you're trying to do, but like, I don't think trying to make tea sexy is going to get you like too far. It's weird. I don't think it's the type of like demographic you're trying to seek and you're limiting yourself. So then I started to pivot more into, again, the core and the essence of what Tease has been since day one. It's about, how are you feeling and how can we offer a bit more support into your day to complement that?
Yeah. Cause I think, we might as well educate the viewers a bit about Tease. I think it's not just a drink to enjoy. It's a drink that's going to maybe help with anything that's going on, gastro or whatnot that you have, right? And I think, Tease Wellness, right?
Yeah.
Is the long form name.
Yes.
Talk to me about why it was meant to be more than just a drink to enjoy, I guess.
Definitely. So we wanted to hit on that intersection of flavor and function, because it doesn't matter how much you talk about how something's good for you. If people don't believe it tastes good, they're probably not going to even give it a chance. And so we always focused on these like super flavor forward tea blends that were amazing, whether they were hot or iced, completely on their own, no sugar, nothing added, nothing artificial, just beautiful, whole, loose leaf tea ingredients now in the convenience of pyramid tea bags, no microplastics, no bleaches, nothing like that.
And these are these little silk bags, right?
They're really bougie. They're
yes,
really
they are. Okay,
yeah,
continue.
So when we look at the evolution of teas over the years, it went from like the hot pink chaotic branding to just loose leaf tea and stand-up pouches. And then if we pause in that era for a second, when we started to get, less about the hot pink era and just like more about the pastels and the neutrals and just focus in the direction of functional wellness, retailers didn't want to talk to us because they were just these stand-up pouches of blended tea. We even went on Dragon's Den and we got crucified. They're like, what makes you, stand out from all the other tea companies out there? And Manjeet rolls her eyes. But she had a point. Like, it was nothing that special. The pouches would fall down on the few retail shelves they were on. And so in the height of the supply chain crisis, I decided to reverse engineer everything that we did from the ground up. And we created, in the process of that, the world's first fully biodegradable and refillable tea collection that's also super Instagram worthy. And it's retail first. It's a premium experience. It meets that intersection of premium gifting, beauty, wellness, and lifestyle. And when I say those 4 categories, people don't even think of tea. So on one hand, it's really exciting that we're creating this category of this premium tea that meets the intersection. But on the other hand, it carries this very heavy responsibility of proving that we're worth being a leader in this category that we're creating at, a $22 MSRP.
And you have the certified B Corp status as well. And I'm sure that plays into this as well. How does one even go about getting certified B Corp? Is it a big thing? Is it something that I could do for?
Yeah, you could absolutely get started. So it is a journey. It took us 2 years to become a certified B Corp. But what I really love about B Corp is that they offer this free, it's like a survey thing. But anyway, it's free to any business, and it's pretty extensive. I think you answer about 100 questions about your business, and right away it shows you how you would score today. And most businesses score roughly around a 50, and you need to have at least 80 points to be a B Corp. So I think when we first did this initial assessment, it's called the B Lab assessment, I think we were a 60, and I was shocked. I was like, oh, we're gonna get 100 for sure, because we had already been purpose-built and very intentional. And we were just looking at B Corp as a way to show consumers like the logo on the package so that consumers could quickly look at the package and know, like, okay, this company did its due diligence and we've audited and we verified it. They're not greenwashing. They're not purpose washing. Like, they actually are walking.
Which is very important today. Yeah. And even in marketing and advertising, it's something that gets manipulated a lot. Absolutely. But in this sense, you cannot. You have to qualify for it. And the qualifications, like you said, it's interesting that they're going to build the framework for you of how to actually achieve getting
so that's
the certification.
Just it, right? So we got a 60. We didn't get anywhere near an 80. And those 20 points, like it to your point, like, it gave a roadmap. It's like, okay, well, if we just invest, because at the time we had this huge facility in the east end of the city. Well, if we just invest in energy efficient lights, for example, that's 2 points we can get. If we implement, adding some type of top up before like maternity leave top up before people go on leave, that can also get us 2 points. And these are just
so it's not all environmental.
No, it's environmental and social. So it's like social internal governance, and then also external with your supply chain. So it's simply holding our supply chain partners accountable, having
That must be very difficult.
It can be, but for example, so all of our accessories are made in China. So when you have products that are made in China, people might think, well, that must be the hardest to audit because you're here in Canada and they're in China. Well, there are third-party inspectors that you can hire that are in China, where you tell them the very specific specs. You expect them to show up to the factory and audit. It only costs a few $100s. I shouldn't say only, but it is important if that's important to your business. And they make sure that, they're getting paid fair wages, that there are safety policies in place, that they audit all of these things so that, again, like, you can bring that back into your business and say, we have verified that, our supply chain partners meet our standards, and also B Corps, and those add into the points as well. So it was just by doing a little bit more intentional lifting, we were able to become a certified B Corp 2 years later. We've since recertified because you have to do it every 2 years. And we've gone from...
Which is also great because it keeps you accountable long throughout
term.
The whole thing. Yeah.
And our initial score was, I think, almost 90 points. And then when we recertified, we're now at 108 points. And
amazing.
The last thing I'll say about B Corp, we're a small business, and it wasn't easy, but it was worth it, because now as a small business, we can say, look, we walk the talk like these big brands like Patagonia and Allbirds and Ben & Jerry's and The Body Shop. And, whether you're a small business or a big corporation, you can walk the talk as well.
And have you noticed that the clientele that is buying teas is enjoying the fact that you are a B Corp certified company? Is it something that actually stands out from how you interact with the market and share your story?
Yeah, I think the B Corp model still has a lot of work, like B Corp as an organization, they still have a lot of work to do to educate consumers. I feel like a lot of that lift is left on companies like ours to educate people on what a B Corp is. But the short answer of your question, it absolutely helps in a few ways. Those who know, who are the conscious consumer, who do wake up every day and want to vote consciously with their dollar and make sure that their dollars are going with places that match their internal values, absolutely. There's a growing demographic there that knows what B Corp is. And if they can look at Tease on the shelf next to 5 other brands and they're overwhelmed and they're like, I don't know which one I want to buy. And they pick up Tease and they're like, oh, packaging is not only biodegradable and gorgeous and giftable, but it's a certified B Corp, easy. And they buy it, right? There's that. And then there's also Whole Foods, right? Like it took us over 2 years to get into Whole Foods. One thing I can tell you about that experience is you can probably imagine that they get a stack of brands like begging to be reviewed, begging, that want to be in line to see if they can make it on the shelves of Whole Foods. When we presented our product, we definitely got ahead of some of the other companies to get reviewed because they saw that we were a B Corp. Because Whole Foods has some of the most strict legal compliance and social and environmental processes and requirements. They have some of the toughest to get through. But if they see you're a B Corp, they're like, wait, we might not actually have to waste this person's time.
We know you're vetted already.
We know you're vetted already. We know that you're actually going to make it at least 50% of the process through 80%, hopefully 100%, right? But there's a lot of businesses that don't even get halfway there because they don't meet some of those requirements. So that B Corp helped get our attention for one of the biggest retailers.
And just one last question on the B Corp side. What made you even want to go down that process? Because like you said, there's a financial even though we're only talking, maybe hundreds of dollars or a couple $1,000s, there's still a financial, cost to it, right? And I'm sure, time spent and everything that it took to get there, you could have easily said, fuck it, I'm not doing this.
For sure. And many do. And it's over $1,000 a year, by the way, for us to have our certification. So I'll before I answer your question, I'll walk back and say one thing that's great about B Corp, and again, there's no perfect organization out there. B Corp gets a lot of criticism, like any organization that's trying to make an impact in one way or another, but they are doing the strictest auditing in my view. But they have a not sliding scale, but it's based on, they'll meet you where you're at, like based on your revenue, based on your status as a founder, like do you come from an underrepresented background? They look at your intersectional background and then the pricing is slotted in that way.
So there's a tiered approach to it.
There's a tiered approach. So that's great. So it makes it a bit more accessible in terms of them trying to meet you where you're at. But in terms of deciding if we were going to do it or not, to answer your original question.
Yeah. Like, was it a personal feeling that you had to go this route?
Yeah, it was by 2021 when we decided to, again, create Tease, the era that you see today, the world's first fully biodegradable and refillable packaging. And we also have like our sister company Founders Fund that invests in women entrepreneurs. Like there's a lot going on within our ESG focus groups, but we're entering this crazy era of greenwashing and purpose washing, and so many brands out there that claim they're doing this, claim they're doing that. And my biggest fear was putting out these claims into the world and people trying to attack them or question them and attack our integrity as a company.
I mean, there's like so many documentaries that I've watched in the last year about this. So
exactly.
I can imagine.
So B Corp was kind of like the only organization that we knew and believed at the time that was helping entrepreneurs and small businesses businesses of all sizes show that they have the receipts.
Amazing. One thing that I did want to touch on, and we might be going back a little bit, but I mean, it's comical to me that you are a sommelier of 2 drinks that I don't drink. One being wine.
That's so surprising.
2 being Tease.
That's extra surprising.
I just don't like hot drinks. That's the thing. Okay. But I do like iced tea, and I do want to talk about iced tea at some point with you. But I know I've had friends that have been certified as sommeliers. for wine. It's not an easy process. They're typically stressed out for that exam and the time before it. You do that. Did you get that through one of the hotel jobs, or was that something that you wanted to do on your own?
I got it on my own, but I proposed it to the hotel to pay for it, which they did. I sought out the the Tea and Herbal Association of Canada. So they represent the entire industry in this country from garden to cup. And so I reached out to them to become a professional tea sommelier. It was an 8-month journey. Learned all about importing, exporting, the different types of tea varietals, a little bit of like herbal and functional botanicals, even some more obscure courses that kind of lended itself more to hospitality, but how to cook with tea, bake with tea, tea-infused cocktails, mocktails. So it was like a very well-rounded program. But to your point, there was a exam that was very stressful at the end. I had 10 different types of tea all lined up in front of me. And just from looking at them and just from tasting them, I had to identify not only what type of tea it was, but what country of origin it came from.
All right. So I've seen you kind of do this again on social media with other tea brands. Which was harder, the other tea brands or the actual sommelier exam?
The other tea brands, because in the one that you were probably pointing out that went viral, it's where so to walk that.
You thought everything was David's tea. I think that's how it went.
No, so my team member, she surprised me in this video for people who are listening with 4 different teas in a box. And all I could see was the straw poking out of it, and they were iced tea. And I had to sip each one and guess which one was our tea's Peach Please blend.
Right.
Because there were 4 different peach teas. So palate is everything. And I got my own tea wrong. So that is why that video went viral. And we got so many trolls who were like, fire your marketing manager. Like, why would you post
I saw this, yes.
But I'm also like, bring it on. Like, keep feeding the algorithm, because this video just kept going.
So I think with wine, you sniff coffee beans between.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
That's one of them?
Yeah.
Is there anything to do with tea?
Yes, absolutely. So not that I'm going to overly defend myself here and why I couldn't pick out my own tea in the lineup. Palette is everything. And with the 4 that were lined up, I was trying some that had artificial flavors and sweeteners in it. Like I had some that were really like, can I swear?
Yeah.
Or like fucking with my palate, right? So you'd taste something that was like pure sugar in your mouth or stevia or whatever, and it would totally cloud your palate.
Okay.
And I'd have to go back and forth and decide which was what. And
so you were not cleansing the palate?
No, I should have had a cracker.
Yeah, I didn't see
or
it.
Like a sip of water. I was not. And it was just supposed to be a fun video. And I thought for sure I would get it right because I know our tea. But my palate obviously got biased and clouded because once I had that intense artificial enhanced tea, when mine came next, mine tasted so subtle. Like it tasted great, but it just tasted so soft in comparison that everything was clouded.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, this tea that we're talking about, is it best served hot or do you like it cold? Do you even like iced tea?
I love iced tea.
Okay.
I love hot tea. And we have intentionally formulated every single tea's blend to be exceptional, hot or iced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I love brisk iced tea.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's like the peasant brand for you.
No.
You know,
I like a good brisk iced tea when I'm crushing a pizza.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I even remember recently Nestea was going to cease to exist in Canada for the Nestle Lipton's IT or
they had a
whatever.
good iced tea for a while.
Yeah, and there was so much public outcry about this.
Classics.
So I was just wondering, you know, were you part of the public outcry? Because it's tea, you know, at the end of the okay. All right. Well, moving on from that. I'm obviously interested about the business side of this for you because at a certain point, this gets big. Mm-hmm. And you may have loved tea. You may have loved being a sommelier and enjoyed, you know, educating people on tea. But at some point you said, hey, I got to put it on this business hat and run a business. And, you still are are you called the CEO?
CEO, yeah.
Yeah. So you're the CEO. You've given yourself that title, and, you have to live up to it, and you have to listen to all the problems of your staff and make the decisions that are going to lead this company into the future. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you transitioned into that? Because like you said, you didn't go to business school. I didn't go to business school either. Don't worry. But you now are running a business, and it's on the high gear as well.
Yeah, it's intense. It's, we talked a lot about the origins, a lot of the messy middle, but one thing we haven't talked about that kind of leads to what you're asking is, well, where is Tease at now? So, when I say we created this beautiful packaging today that meets this intersection, this premium intersection of gifting, beauty, wellness, and lifestyle, and also premium grocery, we went from having 10 retailers in the old era of Tease to over 750 across the United States and Canada. We have 750 retail partners. We're in Indigo. We're in Whole Foods. We're in dozens and dozens and dozens of independent retailers across Canada and the US. We've seen huge success because of the new era of Tease that people see and love today. And to your point, we've grown so much on the retail side. We've grown on the e-commerce side. We've launched subscriptions. We're consistently, 7-figure company year over year now. I had to leave Shopify at one point. It was the golden handcuffs, right? Because here I was, at the height of my career at Shopify. I was managing a team of people of 8 at Shopify. And then I had someone at Tease managing my team of 7 at Tease. And the more you grow as a business, to your point, the more complexity there is, the more liabilities there are. I still own 100% of the company today, but in order to do that, I've had to leverage debt financing. So now there's debt on the business that's tied to my mortgage, that's tied to my daughter's RESP. Like, oh shit, things got serious, And so I had to leave that safety net, the golden handcuffs of my job, because Tease was too big to risk failing at this point. There's so much on the line. And so that's where we're at today at Tease. And having no business background is something that I'm actually incredibly proud of, because as I'm sure you can appreciate, you learn best by throwing yourself in and figuring it out. And the problems never go away. The problems only get harder, more intense, and more higher stakes.
I think they say mo money, mo problems.
100%.
Right?
But the good news is, just like working out, just like anything that you commit yourself to, you get so much better at navigating it. And so that's where we're at. The problems are bigger and more complicated, but I just kind of wake up. I'm like, okay, hit me. Let's go.
So I guess what do you most look forward to when you start your days then for work? There's a lot of goings on. There's still probably testing that you get to do from time to time, mentoring others within your company. What are those things that really motivate you to make this business thrive and continue?
Yeah, I'm in a new era of mini existential crisis, full transparency, because I was sold the idea, like many founders, we're talking like 3-4 years ago, grow at all costs, right? Grow, scale, get your product in front of as many eyeballs as possible. Forget about bottom line. It's all about top line and market share and whatever. And so I really subscribed to that idea. We saw a lot of growth at Tease as a result of our intentionality to grow. But here we are a couple years later, and I'm like, wait a minute, I was on the verge of burnout, like time and time again. I have a daughter, right? She's now 7 years old. I want to be able to just take off in the middle of the day and like go to her school field trip or watch her at a talent show, whatever it is. I didn't work this hard on my business for so long to be chained to my desk or my Google Calendar, right? So now I'm in this like mini existential crisis of, okay, like I've built the thing, I've grown the thing, but if I want to grow and take it to the next level, do I want to keep sacrificing myself and the things around me in the process? And so I've actually slowed Tease down a little bit in that sense and scaled back to try and flirt with the idea of reclaiming more of my time, more of my freedom. But now I'm in that middle messy area where it's like, well, what is the cost of that? Will we see our revenue decline, but our profits go up? Is that a bad thing? So I don't know the answer to that, but that's kind of the spot that I'm in right now.
I want to talk a little bit about the other business where you do give back to the community. You've given back significant amount of money through mentorship to other young female entrepreneurs. Do you mind telling us more about what that is and how you do it?
And it's actually a part of my mini, existential crisis right now in terms of like what's next. So we've been a purpose-driven company since before I even knew what that word meant, before I knew what a social enterprise was. But going back to my early beginnings of entrepreneurship, even going back a little bit before that, I was the first person in my family to graduate high school, let alone go on to college. And of course, as you know, I dropped out before I figured out the thing I was going to actually graduate in. If you looked at like my family data and you translated that into, would Sheena...
Are you in the mafia? Is that
no,
what we're getting at? Oh, okay.
No,
all right.
Oh my gosh, no. My upbringing was like a combination of Shameless meets Gilmore Girls, but not as cute or funny. So you can just kind of make of that like what you will. I grew up with a single mom. She had me at 17. Lived a lot in Cornwall as a child, growing up. Like I said, I moved around a lot. So no, it wasn't mafia. It was more Shameless and Gilmore Girls meets mafia. But anyway, statistically speaking, I had no business having a business on paper, right? And so my journey of entrepreneurship was so hard in the early years. Like you can't Google what you don't know to Google in the first place, right? And so enter Founders Fund in 2019, many years after Tease had been established, we were finally ready to embed more purpose and intentionality through Founders Fund. And so through Founders Fund, it's a sister organization that Tease owns and operates, and we've raised and executed over $300,000 in programming and mentorship and grant funding to the next generation of successful women entrepreneurs who are in a very early, fragile stage right now. Who are in the stage where they're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm still showing up, and I'm about this close to throw away the towel, And so that's who our grant funding, our mentorship, and our programming supports at Tease at Founders Fund. And that's also the part of what we do that lights me up. It's the part that gets me excited to get out of bed every day. I love what we do at Tease, but I really love what we do at Founders Fund if we're talking about legacy, if we're talking about long-term purpose. And so it's also a reason why I'm looking at, Tease, how do we do more of the Founders Fund side of things and not get too stressed out about how far we grow Tease in the process.
And I think Ottawa is a great city to expand things like that. We look at Invest Ottawa with SheBoot and all the amazing people like Sonia Shorey that help in initiatives like this. Have you met any great success stories yet that you want to...
Founders Fund?
Yeah, that you want to tell us about?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what's cool about Founders Fund is that the money isn't a crazy amount when we talk about grants. It's like $5,000 to $25,000, which is huge. But most of our grants are micro grants between $5,000 to $10,000, and we're catching founders again in an early stage. So everyone who's listening has probably seen Bloom before, like the superfood lattes and the colorful packaging, and we were their first grant distributor, I guess. So we gave $5,000 in grant funding to them in their very first year of business. Cheekbone Beauty is a really cool Indigenous owned and led beauty brand that is now in Sephora across the country. We were also one of the first to issue a grant to Cheekbone Beauty, I think in their first 2 years of being established. And so Bloom, they went on to raise millions after in like VC funding and angel investment and all of that. Cheekbone Beauty went on to, again, be on every store, every Sephora shelf across the country. Did Founders Fund, are we the reason why that happened? No. But are we part of, the piece of making that founder feel validated and feeling heard and seen and realizing like...
Confident,
because we issue grant funding as part of a pitch fund. You have to pitch to receive a grant. And because I believe it's the most important skill any founder can have, whether you're at an awkward networking event, whether you're talking to your bank and trying to negotiate terms, whether you're at a trade show, eventually in front of investors, you need to nail your pitch. And that's how we issue our grants. And so we're building the confidence of women in pitching their vision to make it compelling to the person who's hearing it. And so even though we're not the reason directly that they've gone on to do these incredible things, we're absolutely indirectly the reason for giving them the confidence to keep going and pursuing audacious goals later on.
100%. And, I guess from a personal note then, you have a 7-year-old daughter. Is she noticing any of this yet, or is this you educating her still on what mom does and what how you live where you live and afford to go to camp and all that? Does she understand this stuff yet?
Fortunately, I don't have to educate her because she's forced by enjoyment of just living in this world, right? Like she has, my husband is also an entrepreneur. He's a co-founder of an engineering company here in Ottawa. So when Cammie, myself, and my husband are sitting at the dinner table, there's shop talk, like there's business talk. Like this stuff is just organically all around her. As far as Tease goes, like she sees me coming up with our new formulations. She tries them. She loves making me mocktails, on the weekends and in the evenings. It's like,
so she's a tea drinker.
She loves our tea ice, some of the sweeter ones for sure. But she's a big Tease ambassador. Her teachers tell me this, like I'll pick her up from school and they'll say, Cammie just like goes on about teas like so much. And sometimes she's actually snuck tea from home and brought it to her teachers to help, quote unquote, spread the word, I guess. But she's the biggest brand ambassador. I've dragged her to trade shows. I've dragged her to bank meetings. If I didn't have childcare, like she just comes with me and this is her world. And now her biggest motto is, well, she uses it against me, but if we're walking down Richmond Road and she wants something from one of the stores, and if I have to say something like, no, Cammie, like we don't need that, she'll say, but mom, it's really important to support a small business like Tease. I'm like, oh my gosh. So she knows how important it is to not just, to care about Tease the way that she does, but she bleeds small business already for others.
Just from a selfish perspective, then, am I going to see a tea stand at the end of the driveway this summer? Because I haven't seen one in the 4 or 5 years that you've been my neighbor.
Have I not told you she started her own business?
No.
Oh, yeah. So she's actually recently, Cammie and her cousin Mia have started their own cotton candy company. And so she's like right in, a kid version of entrepreneurship. But my sister-in-law and I took it a bit too seriously, in a good way. So my sister-in-law, she comes from like this crazy nerdy like science background and like, I don't know. Can't really explain what she does, but I know she's super smart and cares a lot about healthy ingredients. And so this is how it all transpired. She said, I'll make the cotton candy for fun as an experiment with Mia. You're the e-com person. Maybe you and Cammie can like sell it, put it online, put it on Shopify, put it on Fair, a wholesale platform, get a social media account. So we did that. It was 3 months in the making. It launched just 2 weeks ago. I'll give you some cotton candy for you and your family to enjoy.
Amazing.
But yeah, so now Cammie and Mia, her cousin, they are, they're kidpreneurs and it's fun. And
I love that
process from the beginning. So no, it won't be a tea stand, but there'll probably be a cotton candy stand at the end of the driveway.
We also have the market opening in a couple of weeks. They could.
Oh yes, in the Byron market, you mean?
Well, no, down on.
Oh yes, on Byron.
Yes, Byron. Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, she could get a little stand there.
Not a bad idea.
Okay, so we've got tea, we've got you, we've got tariffs, we've got Trump. Mm-hmm. Take me through. Like you have been already, your open and honesty about how you've been affected by this. Because I think, when the tariffs started, initially I was shocked that it had happened. I worried that some of our clients would be affected in a way that would affect us.
Right.
But I knew directly I would not face it as a business owner. You, on the other hand, have faced it head on. Mm-hmm. So where do you stand with the effects of tariffs right now?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of where we stand, we are somewhat okay because, again, there's been so much yo-yoing. I think the hardest part for business owners is feeling like pawns and having to feel like we are just casualties of this, economic trade war attempt thing that's Trump's been trying to do. Well, and he has successfully done with, other countries like China, for example. But it was a 6 months of like knots in my stomach, how proactive can I be versus reactive? Oh, do I need to make investments in like US warehouses? Like, is my whole business model going to change? I invested tens of thousands of dollars in trade shows for Q1 this year from January to March, only to one of them cost me over $15,000, this one booth in New York City, only to show up in that very day that I was there, these tariffs were announced by Trump in January. And now all of a sudden, I'd spent months preparing for this trade show. I'd spent tons of money on this trade show. And I have all these retail buyers walking the floor who only want to talk about politics instead of products, or a whole lot of like, oh, we're so sorry he's not our president comments, or, oh, we like Tease, we like what you're offering, but we're going to hold for now until this settles. And even now, like 3-4 months later, even though most of our products, like, we're fine now, it wasn't certain if we were going to be fine. And we still don't know if we're going to be fine long term if the president decides to just wake up one day and, change his mind again, right? And so because of that, we have buyers in the US that are still holding out conversations, that aren't reordering. We've seen a dip in our US sales. We've seen a huge spike in our Canadian sales, in this whole made in Canada commodity that's come with it as a positive side effect. But let's be real, like that's kind of like I believe, not to be pessimistic, but feels a bit like the pandemic commodity in the beginning, where it was like, we're all in this together. It's like made in Canada, yay. But I think it's a flash in the pan. It's a short-term thing. So we've got to be really strategic. And what I've learned more than anything is we need to diversify well beyond Canada and the US.
And that's just it, right? Like I think what this has done for some businesses is open their eyes to, hey, maybe it is time to take that leap into the, UK. European market, right? Is that something that you have considered or even started to look at?
We're planting the seeds now. The thing is, it's funny. There were a lot of people saying like, oh, people worried about tariffs. Just look at other markets. It's not that easy. It takes time to plant seeds, to nurture relationships, to gain trust with, distributors or retailers, or even D2C online customers of other countries. So we're now planting those seeds. We're starting in our own backyard, talking to our own distributors here in Canada and saying, do you know distributors in the UK that would be aligned with what we're trying to do, or in the EU? So we're starting there, starting those conversations, doing the whole back and forth, like sending samples, getting on calls, but it's a long game.
Yeah, and I guess if we talk about the true long game, do you feel as if, if we were sitting here 20 years from now, we might be holograms at that time, but 20 years from now, do you think you're going to look back at this tariff fiasco and say to yourself, it was actually the best thing that happened to us because it forced us to grow our market share quicker than we had initially thought?
I think so. Even though, I have been very frustrated by it in recent months, I think you're right. One of the ways that I'm already realizing that is just getting more smart about how we do business cross-border. So as an example, we now just are in the process of leaving our current warehouse to a new warehouse in Mississauga that also has a presence in New York State. And so what's great about doing that is now we can transfer inventory to the US and pay tariffs or taxes or whatever on a COG level, so a cost level, versus a retail level, right? So that alone, is just better business as we continue.
So you haven't considered mules, taking it over the border? And
well, because even though 40% of our revenue is substantial, it just didn't feel like enough to justify managing 2 warehouses. But now it's like, okay, we just need to roll up our sleeves and do it, because it
elbows up a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I think the last thing that I really wanted to dive into was, and this is coming from someone who does not drink tea, but I know there's Earl Grey, there's green tea, there's chai, like chai tea latte, yeah, right. And I'm sure there's hundreds other ones out there. What is it that allows you to create new flavors? Because I think that's something that's always interested me, even from an overall beverage perspective. And obviously, as a company, you need to have new product offerings and keep things fresh, right? So you're a sommelier, you understand this, you understand what tastes good in a tea perspective. How are you actually developing new flavors, though?
So I'll walk back and share, the way you describe the different types of tea. It's exactly how I described them when I first started. I didn't know a thing about tea, but an interesting fact, just for clarity for anybody listening who wants to nerd out on tea for a hot second, all tea technically comes from the exact same plant. Okay, so black tea, green tea, white tea, oolong tea, and pu'er, they all come from the exact same plant. And the difference in those variations is how it's harvested, how it's processed, the climate, the soil, it all affects that final product. Very similar to wine. You only got red grapes and white grapes. And from there you have hundreds, if not more, of different varietals, right? And so that is the part about tea that initially excited me, about how you can have all this complexity based on all these interesting nuances of how the leaves are plucked. Now, when you go into ingredients like ashwagandha or lavender or chamomile, technically none of that is tea. It's just herbal ingredients, right? So I'm a tea sommelier, but I also love functional herbal ingredients. And to answer your question on how we decide which formulations to do, I always look at our demographic, which obviously is sways largely female, so it's mostly women who are in the late 30s to like mid 50s range. And we are busy women. We are ambitious women. We are women who care about, supporting the things that we care about most in front of us, whether it's community, family, work, and everything in between. And we just need more support in our life. Like, we have more demands on us than ever before because parenting requires so many more demands than it used to 20 years ago. Work demands, like with digital demands, like constantly being on our phones, like there's just so much more expected of us. And so I look at, our new flavors and offerings as what do women need more support with in their lives at this time? And I just kind of start from there. And I look at the functional ingredients that support that, make sure that there's a good flavor profile to back it up. And that's really the inspiration behind how we decide what we offer.
So when I watch Shopping Channel the next time, am I going to see a new flavor coming out soon? Is there anything that you can tell me that's on the horizon?
We are bringing back a tea. I can give you a little bit of a teaser there. We had this one tea that I loved, and I guess many people did, and I didn't realize just how many until we put it in the vault. But there was an outpour. Like, we just felt this tea, she didn't match our overall functional collection. Like, she was just a really good tasting tea, but didn't really do anything for you functionally. So, excuse me. So once we put her in the vault because she didn't match like the functional wellness vibe, we had an outpour, an outrage of people being like, bring her back. And we'd explain like, sorry, like, here's the reason why. And they said, well, she doesn't need to have a function. Can't she just be, can she just, So we took that feedback seriously. And we're, for the first time in many years, we're bringing a tea out from the vault that we thought was going to be retired forever.
It just tastes good. That's all.
It just tastes great. And actually, one interesting trend with some of our customers, one interesting trend of feedback was that, not just can she just be or she just tasted great. People would say she was just a tea that we enjoyed in moments of like connection and conversation when we'd have people over. And so that was kind of interesting. It's like, well, wait a minute. If we're talking about well-being, like connection and community and like having people around us that we care about. And
being open up to others, that's key.
Important.
Yeah.
So now we're not only bringing her back, but we're rebranding her as her function. Her point is just, the queen of conversation, the queen of connection.
And are all the teas known as female?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that. Well, lastly, I just want to know from you, where can we buy this tea? Where can we find more information about you? Anything that you want to share with us, we would love to know more. Mm-hmm. I know that you guys have a very active Instagram account. Mm-hmm. I think if you could just share with us a little bit more about how to connect with Tease.
Absolutely. So you can find us at Tease Wellness on Instagram. And I do point to our Instagram because that's where, as you point out, you'll see a lot of our fun, active content. We're all about, healthy choices, healthy rituals through tea, not just enjoying tea on its own, but tea mocktails or tea-infused beauty rituals. Like, if a woman's going to take 10 minutes in her 10-step skincare routine, why not have a functional beverage that complements that? Like, this is what we do too. We also have tea-infused self-care essentials like matcha face masks, Earl Grey body scrubs, coconut chamomile bath soaks. So really this to round out those rituals at home. You can find us at teasetea.com. You can find us at Indigo. You can find us on well.ca. And you can find us at Whole Foods.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for stopping by today.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
It's been great to chat with you. And to those watching, a quick note, I will not pull a Dave Chappelle and make you wait another 2 years for another episode. So don't delay. Check back soon. We're going to have some more exciting guests throughout this season, and we can't wait to show them what we have in store with you. But today, thank you, Sheena, for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you, and ciao, guys. Take care.